Welcome everyone to the Analytic Mind podcast by Enterprise DNA. This is a podcast which dives into a range of different ideas and tips to empowering a data-led culture within organizations. We want you to develop the analytic mind to create immense value for yourself and your teams. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Analytic Mind podcast. I'm joined today by Chris Barber. Chris is very well known out there in the Microsoft community with a reasonably popular website, and also just someone who's highly engaged in various aspects of the community, MVP, social media activity, so on and so forth. So excited to get your insights, Chris. And maybe to start us off, why don't you just give us a quick intro, a little bit more about yourself, so everyone tuning in can know a little bit more about your background.
Thank you, Sam. And also, been a long time admirers of Enterprise DNA, and obviously I've presented at a couple of different events that you've done over the years, and obviously, the website and course you're running are great out there. So I'm Chris Barber. I'm a Microsoft MVP. I sort of finished a master's in analytics, and then I went into finance. So I know quite a few of the different guests you've had on here are chartered accountants, so I add myself to that list as well. So I was in finance, and I think, like a lot of your guests, I saw sort of the potential with things like Power Pivot within Excel, and obviously evolved into being Power BI, just how powerful that could be for the finance community. And that's really where my interest lies. It's in the finance side of things and in sort of like the large data modeling. So if we get to models of tens of billions of rows, that sort of stuff really excites me. I know that's the kind of the 0.01% of users out there, but so large scale data modeling, financial reporting. I run starschema.co.uk, which is a website. I've had over 1,000 people take my course on finance. I've also done, I don't know how many talks at the Microsoft Reactor in London, and several online as well, with the London Business Analytics group in particular. So that's a bit about me. Really interested in Power BI and consulting in that space as well.
Awesome. And tell me, how did you get super interested in the larger data models? Because that is quite unique. That is, I mean, obviously you've got a website called Star Schema, so that gives us a few ideas there as to why. But how did that become quite an interest for you in the whole landscape of Power BI?
So I think Power BI and sort of the Microsoft stack, and not just Microsoft, other companies now, a lot of it is kind of month to month releasing and kind of quite quick sort of stuff. And I think there's a temptation to get sucked into that, or I need to be constantly like learning all these new little things. But actually, at its core, the engine behind Power BI and sort of the tabular modeling, those kind of principles have existed for a long time. So I was really interested in kind of the deep learning around that type of thing, in how you build tabular models, right? So Chris Adamson, Star Schema book, Kimball, all these kind of things. So that's really, really what got me interested. Because I was using Power BI as a backend, not even telling people that it was Power BI, right? And just using the Excel connected to Power BI when I first started out with it, right? So that's how I got really into the model. And then as you go, you learn more and more about the tabular engine and what sits behind Power BI. And I think that for me is the most interesting bit, right? You have dropping my pen there. You have a business problem. And then from the business problem, you have a data model which meets that problem. And I think that bit is really, really interesting. And then once you get into that, also you get into the larger scale problems, and you get into the minutiae of all the various different little settings you can do that 99.9% of users have got no idea about. But if you use Tabular Editor, which I know you've got courses again on Enterprise DNA, you can get into the weeds stuff. That stuff. And then I had fortunate that I work with, Accenture, Avanade, right? So we do have definitely the most MVPs and all that in the UK, right? And we deal with the large scale clients, so I get the opportunity as well.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I see from client interactions, advisory interactions that I have, which aren't, I would say, I don't do that often, but maybe every month or so I have one sort of interaction with a customer. It's always the model which really is ruining their Power BI experience or ruining their Power BI deployment. It's generally almost 100% of the time way too complicated. way too complicated, way too many tables. It makes everything harder. So is that something that you have seen as well, that sort of behavior is going on? And do you have you had come up with any ideas around how you can make it less complex, how it can become far more intuitive for the everyday user?
Yeah, so I think I've got a sample bias here, Sam, in that, I'm a consultant. I go in when there's a problem. And like you said, most problems are caused by the model, right? So most clients I go into have got a problem. They might say the problem's DAX. They might say the problem is slow visuals. But like you said, the real heart of the issue is the model and the understanding of the business problem to do that. I don't think there are any quick and fast answers to getting a correct data model. And I think it's both a good and a bad thing, right? I think if you want to get into the space, and obviously those of you listening, I think getting that deep learning will give you a huge advantage that other people won't be able to compete with you. And I think Kimball talks about, Anson talks about it. It's not, modeling isn't all technical theory. It's kind of also, there's a bit of judgment call in there as well, right? It's not just, here's hard and fast rules and you abide by them. You have to know and sort of apply different models. So no, I don't think there are any quick fixes when it comes to model. I think it is really understanding the problem, and I think it's really understanding the theory. And quite often what I'll do is I will draw up 3 or 4 different ways of modeling a particular problem, and I'll have a chat with it about my colleagues and go, well, here are the different options. And then you can have a sensible discussion. There are also ways you can do, simple things that you can do to fix your model, right? You can run C# script. So if you think all a model is TMSL script, you can run C# script to clean up your TMSL script, right? So there's kind of quick things like that, but that for me is around the edges. The problems with models is the understandability piece, which there isn't a quick fix for, in my opinion.
Yeah. One of the things that I've defaulted to, just from seeing this over and over again, is the total simplification of each unique Power BI desktop model, because Power BI desktop is currently, or historically, we have done a lot of the modeling. I know that that's sort of moving to a different, it can be moved to a different part of the stack, particularly with data marts that are coming on stream, and maybe some other technologies like tabular type tools that Microsoft has. But for the vast majority of users, the model is built in Power BI desktop, right? And I've defaulted to, and keen to get your view on that, is that the reality is you probably can break out a much larger model into smaller power models, right? So almost different views of that master model. And those different views could be a Power BI desktop file on its own. And then that makes everything simpler. It makes your model simpler. It makes it more flexible. It makes your measures simpler. If everything is simpler, everything post that can be much simpler and intuitive. So I've gone to this. You can have a master model, maybe managed by someone who is really strong, has a strong skill set. But then for the end user who's having to navigate the model itself, try and break it down into a smaller view, and then maybe stack multiple different smaller view models on top of each other within a workspace. So I'm keen to get your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, 100% right. I think quite often you'll see 5 different models all measuring the same thing, but from different perspectives. So you'll have sales by product, sales by customer, and actually, it could just be one model, right? Because what they've done is they've not focused on the process when they've gone in to model it. Obviously, there's the concept of perspectives of a model. So you can have a bigger model with different perspectives of it, right? More advanced concepts again, but yeah. And so those are the kind of tools where you can break it down. But I think there's 2 extremes, right? There's having loads and loads of small models or having one huge model. Neither is really the right answer. You're not going to have one model for the entirety of the business. And on the other extreme, having lots and lots of little models, all you're going to end up doing is having fragmented information across the business and a lack of single source of the truth. The right answer is somewhere in between that. And then, like you say, and I think that's usually based on processes and in what the business is and how the business operates, which again, there isn't a kind of a hard and fast. It comes with experience. It comes with practice. But then, yeah, like you said, once you've got those ones, then you have views on top of them. I think it's a sensible way to go. But it also depends on, the data literacy within the company and kind of the profile of people you're working with, how far down the road you can go with that.
Yeah, nice thoughts. So what are in your experience, because obviously working with some larger customers, and you probably have done over many years now, what are some of the big challenges that you're seeing out there with implementations of Power BI or just a data culture?
So I think one of the big, two-part question there. So one of the big things with data culture is if you are going to go down the self-service, fewer models, everybody gets involved, obviously you need to sort of raise the bar of the overall data literacy within the company. So that's the wider kind of, keeping it forefront of mind for everybody. Maybe you do monthly, you talk about Power BI every month with them and say, here's the latest updates, and you kind of just try and breed that culture. And I've heard other guests on this show talk about things like, having Teams channels, having Power BI in your Teams itself, and all these kind of things, right? So I say around the culture stuff, there's loads and loads of things that you can do. And you've got to work out what's the right forum for your company. Are you in the office? Do you just want to put together? So there's lots and lots of different options around that. And then, sorry, first part of the question, what was it again? It
was sort of more specifically with Power BI. So if you were using Power BI as that tool, like what are the challenges in the architecting of solutions? Is it in making sure that you aren't creating silos and hundreds of different workspaces? Like, what are some of the big things that you've seen that you've had to go in and almost correct, or you've had to go and improve because they've been suboptimal?
Yeah, so I think one of the big challenges is obviously the way the product has evolved. It's turned into this more enterprise tool over time. So what you end up happening is you've got this legacy within an awful lot of companies, right? Where they've got, say, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 reports. They don't even know, right? Until you go in and tell them how many reports they've got. So I think one of the big challenges is sort of legacy and how they've evolved. And then they've got loads of this. And then it's, okay, now I want to kind of rein this in. That's a lot harder than I'm starting from scratch and I just want to kind of build something up, and I'm going to have these as my kind of dedicated enterprise workspaces where I know the data is high quality and I can use things like data certification and all this kind of stuff to tell everybody. So it's the kind of trying to reverse engineer what's there, figure out what's there, and then get back to something that's sensible, right? And I think that's quite challenging. And I think I alluded to earlier today, I think a lot of the challenge, the technology, not just Microsoft, the technology is getting better and better, and it will be better and better tomorrow. So performance and all that, Microsoft are letting you get away with an awful lot these days. You can do some pretty heinous stuff and it will still work. But that doesn't mean it works in terms of adding value to the business, because for me, models are all about understandability. Can you understand them? Can somebody else go in and interpret them? And that thing will never go away. Even if a terribly awkward report performs really well, if you can't understand it, still not there. So yeah, so that for me is the other big challenge.
One of the big things that I think about when building models, amongst other things, but models specifically, is the continuity you want within the business. So if you don't build a model which is intuitive and like can be understood by others and others in the future, you lose all that continuity, that inbuilt knowledge within a business, in my opinion. So have you got any thoughts on that point as well, specifically as well?
Not much more than to agree with you. Yeah, you do. People come and go. If you build a model that's understandably, somebody else picks up and go, oh, this is logical. Yeah, you have that. And, we all know people come and go from organizations. I'm a new consultant. I'll go in for maybe a month, maybe 6 months, and, so it's an even more extreme issue. So everything I do has to be continuous from the point I leave it. So it has to be understandable, right? But no, 100% agree. That is definitely one of the good reasons to build a model.
I have to laugh because I have seen some consultants go in and build things for customers, and the model is a disaster, and the customers having to come and do some advisory work because they have no idea what is actually going on. So I would say that that's not the norm, but I agree with you. Like, that's what you need to aim for, particularly as a consultant.
No, 100%. And I've seen some horrible stuff, in critical stuff in Fortune 500 companies, so it's not unheard of. Yeah, it's quite amazing. I think people just they over index, I think, and they get everything looking flashy up front, and then 6 months later you've got 5 times the amount of data and it all breaks and nothing works, and then you've got to completely re-engineer the back end. It's definitely not unheard of.
Yeah. Can you tell me about the best example you've seen of a really successful implementation of Power BI? Have you got any? I know as a consultant you're usually brought in when it's not going well, but is there one that really sticks to your mind as to has been done really well? They're getting a ton of value. They've changed their data culture. Like, what does best practice look like out there?
Yeah, so I'll be careful to try and not mention any clients, but yeah, I have seen a client where they really did introduce, and this was a multi-billion row solution, analyzing their sales from basically every which perspective, and it gave them real insight and ability to, hey, I can now see everything across all of my thousands and thousands of stores by product, by time of day, really down to the minutiae. And that ability, before, they might have it from one perspective and another perspective, and then somebody asks for it from a combination, and they're kind of mashing it together in Excel and kind of making some assumptions. And now they have the detail and the granularity to go forward. Yeah, on the flip side, I've seen stuff where, there were big decisions made prior to my time at Avanade. I will add here, where people have made big, multi-million-pound wrong decisions because they didn't have the right information, right? So it's come back to cost them really badly. So it's the good and the bad.
Yeah. And what did it take, do you think, to build that quality, or that to bring everything together so that the insight was at such a quality where it was making a huge difference? What did it take? Was it the personnel that they had in there? Was it the IT team? Was it the analyst team? Was it the leadership from the executive team? What do you think it took to deliver something of such high quality?
Yeah, so firstly, I think they had a very good culture. So some people are just deliver, and then you end up getting delivered on rubbish. You could have sensible back and forth conversations with them, and they were very good. They also had a really, really good business analyst, someone who really understood the problems of the business. And it's not always simple exactly what it is they mean, and they were able to really drill down and get to the exact of what they were after and pass those requirements and package those requirements on. So, certainly as a consultant, you only get a very short period of window to understand what the business, and if somebody's been working there for 10 years, that knowledge that they've got, right? If you're working within a business, that business inside out, how it works, all the little details and little nooks and crannies that I'm not going to know as a consultant. So those people are just exceptionally valuable. And they also brought in some really good people. Somebody was hired into that team, just really, really took it forward to another level, from a different consultancy into practice. So but I do think a number of things, but the whole culture around the company was very kind of understanding. They knew they needed to build up their data literacy, and they invested a lot in that as well. So it's all round, it was very successful. I'm trying not to give away too many details to give away who I'm talking about, but they probably know.
Yeah, well, that's great. I mean, that's such useful insight, right? Because the reality is, and this is from what we've seen, is that if you give the technology now gives the everyday business analyst, data analyst superpowers, right? It absolutely does, particularly the Microsoft stack. I mean, this is across the board, but the Microsoft stack particularly, because the business analysts can be the subject matter expert, but then they can help with the data engineering, the data architecture, the data modeling, the data analysis, the data visualization. They can do all of it. They can do all of it with up and down the Microsoft stack. So when you give and empower them with the skill set combined with the internal knowledge of the business and the technology, when you bring those all together, that's a powerful combination, right?
Very powerful combination, and I feel that trend is only going to continue. You know, the stuff away from centralized IT to departmental stuff. You know, it's not a trend that I can see reversing any time, and I think what we'll see from Microsoft and other vendors is they will continue down that path. So if you are in that type of role where you're business analyst, you do have the opportunity, and there will become more and more opportunities in the future for you to do this.
Yeah.
And I 100% agree. And I've heard you mention this on other podcasts, and I've sort of sat there nodding, agreeing to it.
Yeah. And I even look across the Power Platform stack as well. It's just like applications, automations. I mean, there used to be like basically full-on teams that did each of these things separately. even within just like the Power BI stack, you used to have data engineers, you used to have ETL experts, you used to have data modeling experts. But the reality is the empowerment of the everyday business analyst has gone through the roof in the past like 5 to 7 years. It truly has. And I actually do know that I've said this many times on the podcast before, but it never in my opinion is not worth repeating, because it is just so true. It is a transformational change in how these activities can be done within any business, big or small.
100% agree. There's nothing there I can disagree with at all. I think it's definitely a huge opportunity and definitely daunting for some people, especially people from, I suppose, like I'm indexed towards the finance community, right? Especially people from a finance background, they can tend to be, this is the way things have been. Finance has been done the same way for 300 odd years or whatever it is when the first general ledger was put together. So yes, so agree, huge amount of opportunity, and there will only be more. And definitely on the smaller scale, I suppose I'm more indexed to the enterprise scale, where a lot of those things, even though you can do them, you still need specialists. Nothing makes me smile more when I go to work with a decent data engineer and who just brings everything back perfectly, and and everything's the works, and all of my foreign keys and surrogate keys are everywhere where I've said I need them. So yes, you can do them, and definitely in mid-size and small size organizations, and even large organizations, you can do it. And I suppose there's that tipping point in the 1% when you want to be really sure, where I think you still need the experts.
Yep. Yeah, I think everyone, in reality, everyone's been given superpowers. So it's not like the technical experts are going, that they don't need to go anywhere. It's just, I think they can do more. They can be more helpful, and they can empower the business to do a lot more. And when you bring the skill level up across all of those business analysts or everyday data type users, it's a powerful combination. It's a powerful combination of everyone making data more immersive and really driving that data culture. I do want to do a bit of a pivot, Chris. I want to learn a little bit more, and I think those tuning in will be interested a little bit more about MVPs, about how maybe you became one, and what it's entailed ever since you've been one, and following on from that, maybe what you really like about it, or what's great about being an MVP. So I know there's a few questions there, but interested to learn a little bit more about it, and maybe I have a feeling our listeners will as well.
So I give the same advice to everybody. So the things that you need to do, MVP, right? Blogging, speaking, I would say don't do those things in order to become an MVP. In fact, I had no idea that I would become an MVP. I get an awful lot of value out of speaking, blogging, creating courses. When I have to go and explain a complex topic to a client, I'll often write an article or do a talk on it, because I know I'm going to be speaking to them in a month's time on it, and I get the learning and I get the development out of it. So the first thing I'll say is don't do things just to become an MVP. But obviously, once you are an MVP, there are a significant amount of benefits to it, right? There's MVP. We get time with the product team. We get preview for where Microsoft is going in the future, and particularly as a consultant, that helps me. It's both a blessing and a curse, right? Because I might try and design a solution for a client with in mind that I knew something is coming in the future. And this happened very recently, actually. And it's just I built something, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be in a release in a couple of months, so I'll build this solution in. But I can't tell the client that, so it's a blessing and a curse. But it's obviously really, really powerful. But yeah, product team. I've never had the chance to go to the MVP Summit in person because I've been an MVP for 2.5 years or something, and it's always been online. So I think that's the big thing, is actually getting in person, face to face with the team as well will be huge. So yeah, it's I mean, yeah, the future and knowing what's coming is just so valuable, because you can build solutions and you can think about what you're doing, and even kind of stuff that I'm building solutions, I know that they're future proofed because I know what's coming to a certain extent, right? Microsoft can always throw a curveball in there, but I know what's happening. So I know the solutions and the courses I'm putting together on my website, for instance, I know that's going to be valid in X amount of years time as well.
And do you feel like Microsoft do a good job of looking after their MVPs? Because I have no doubt that you've added a lot of value to Microsoft yourself, and a lot of all the MVPs have. So do you feel like it's reciprocated?
Yeah, I think you definitely get stuff back, right? I suppose, like I said, I didn't really do it for an MVP. I think the big benefit I get from an MVP is, like I said, the product team staff being able to push questions to them, but also going to clients and having the credibility. That's just them awarding me gives me quite a lot. In terms of the benefits, I think there's things that happen. You get like a number of different benefits from being an MVP. I don't know if I'm allowed to disclose them all, but you get certain things, right? Which just help you to kind of boost your profile, and also to, like, I've got my website is running a billion row Power BI income statement, right? That's powered by licensing and everything that I get from Microsoft for free, right? I don't have to pay for any of that. Yeah, so that's quite powerful, right? I can build up that big solution, and I wouldn't really want to fork out to run that myself personally.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. And you get some nice plaques and hardware behind you to showcase as well, which is neat.
yeah.
It's kind of it's now the one thing that I'm hoping we'll get one day is the YouTube plaque for having 100,000 subscribers. That's kind of the equivalent these days.
Yeah. No, I've gone out of the YouTube game. I should go back to it at some point. But yeah, no, I know obviously Enterprise DNA, you've got loads of stuff out there, and obviously, your own courses as well. But I don't know where you're at the moment, but you've got some amazing content out there.
YouTube is a pretty tough game these days. It's incredibly competitive. Obviously, I mean, anyone can put up a video on Power BI, and there's a lot of Power BI experts out there now. There wasn't so much when we first started. Or when I first started, when I was doing it by myself, but it's sort of changed a lot now. But I would say so we've evolved as well, just because of that, because there's just so much material, I think that there's room to teach users, bring users across, make them more across other technologies in the ecosystem that work around Power BI and the Microsoft stack. So that's kind of like how we've positioned ourselves in recent years, is to be more than just Power BI, Power Platform, how Python integrations, R integrations. I guess following on from that, have you been across any interesting implementations of other things in the Power BI ecosystem, or has it always been quite Power BI specific for you?
Yeah, truthfully, I've been pretty Power BI specific. Obviously, I've seen stuff with Power Apps and sort of wider solutions, but I've kind of not really indexed towards that. But I know it's a big part of the solution. I suppose I'm pretty awful. You wouldn't want to see a Power App that I built, to be honest with you. It would scare you.
Yeah, right. Look, I think there's enormous room to grow for everyone around Power Apps and Power Automate. I mean, they to me are still so much in their infancy in terms of the impact and the integration that they could have to Power BI and the rest of the Microsoft stack. Even I saw a really good implementation of a Power App in Microsoft Teams. So they built a Power App. It was in Microsoft Teams. It was sort of part of a daily use of a team, and that's super powerful. Like that was a new process which was completely automated, made far better. Those are the sort of big wins that you can have, I think, with utilizing the ecosystem around Power BI, and specifically within the Microsoft universe.
Yeah, no doubt. There's big implementations, right? Obviously, the big famous one is the Heathrow example, which keeps coming up in a number of apps that they've built and been extremely successful. So yeah, but there's
oh really? Oh,
there's
I haven't heard.
Different number of user cases. So yeah,
I haven't
yeah.
heard. Tell me more, because obviously you're in the UK, so you've probably been, have they presented at some user groups, or at some online events?
Yeah, and I'm pretty certain they've had people on stage with Microsoft as well, sort of showing.
Right.
It was probably a couple of years ago now, because I seem to remember it was in person. Yeah, nobody was
Right.
wearing a mask, so that gives me a rough idea of the time period. Yeah, so I know they've kind of done a lot, and they've been used as kind of the big user case. But I can think of other clients that we've dealt with which have used it as well. And there's definitely there's huge room to grow with that, right? And that sort of low code, no code approach. I mean, yeah, there are far more possibilities than I can imagine.
Yeah. So tell me, what is exciting you about this space? What are some of the things that have excited you previously and are happening now? And then what about the future? I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on with AI at the moment, and various other features that Power BI is releasing. But even just in the space, what are some of the things that you're really pumped up about?
Yeah, so I think the things that I'm really pumped up about are under NDA, but I'm definitely interested to hear about. But I would say I'm really interested in the finance space, right? I know it's not necessarily the most interesting for a lot of people, but the way I see it is the Power BI has still got miles to go in particular, right? Or reporting in general, because if you look at the number of people who are using Excel, it's magnitudes bigger than are using any of these other tools that we've just spoke about, right? That could be replaced with them. People are using data entry for Excel and they could be using Power Apps. People are doing VBA when you could do Power Automate, and people are doing a lot of reporting in Excel. So for me, I think the big interesting part will be how people from those industries, people in that space, move more and more into the one version of the truth reporting and kind of evolve into that space. So for me, that is going to be, it's not there, still, every finance department I ever go into, it's still all Excel. It's still, there's a high index on that, right? But I feel the tide is moving in that direction, and there's the power goes from IT more and more to local teams. I think there's going to be some really interesting developments in this space. And I think it'll be an interesting point when the tipping point comes and people start to switch off. I think we're way away from there yet, but I think the two together, using solid quality data in the back that pulls through via APIs into Power BI, into Excel, is kind of the kind of a halfway house, and hopefully we get more and more in that direction. So I know it's not chat TV, and all these kind of sort of more interesting things that people are going on about at the moment, but for me, the finance stuff is really interesting.
Well, I want to dive into that a little bit more, because I find this really fascinating. I might have even said this to a couple of colleagues, or maybe even to my family, to justify why I set up Enterprise DNA. I think about 7 years ago, I said Power BI is going to be bigger than Excel in 10 years' time. I'm pretty confident I said that. I mean, it's a long time ago, but I just saw the potential of Power BI because I was a huge Excel user. And I was just absolutely convinced that this is a better solution. Nothing has changed in my view. Nothing has changed. It is still a far superior way to do any analytics at scale within an organization, to really change, to create a data-driven culture. It is still the tool. But what has not changed is Excel is, what has also not changed is Excel seems to still be so damn popular compared to Power BI. And I couldn't agree more with you that there is so much room to grow in terms of Power BI's usage, even though it is, I believe, quite exponential even now. But it's a better solution than Excel. So what is it? What is it which is holding Power BI back? What do you think it is that is taking much longer than maybe what some of us thought with this changeover to using Power BI versus Excel?
Yeah, so I think I think if I could answer that, I think Microsoft would be writing me a check in hiring me in full, right? Because I think they would love to move a lot of Excel users over to Power BI as well. In fact, obviously that's Power BI team, the more of those users they can index. But I think there's a few things, right? In most organizations, I would say the best Excel users usually come from the finance department. So you tend to have that kind of that there's still a bit of that sort of that mentality of kind of, Excel and this is how we do things. Power BI still doesn't do everything that we want it to do, that finance users, and give you that huge amount of flexibility. Just try and create, that's why, what I've created, 2-hour-long courses on how to do things, right? It doesn't give you that huge amount of flexibility. So I do agree with you to an extent, but on the other hand, I'd say it's the two together. And I think this is where Microsoft is really strong, right? Because Excel is the tool that everybody and anybody uses. It works perfectly with Power BI through the API. So you can get that combination of, you have these two extremes. You have, I want one version of the truth, and I want to change every number any point of the day on a whim, right? And these two views are completely incompatible. But what you can do is you can create that single source of truth, and you can have that in Excel, and then you can, manipulate and say, okay, say I have to take a £30 million provision of my P&L this year. This is what it would look like. So it gives you those two things in tandem. So I don't see Power BI. I don't share your optimism for the move, but maybe that's the people we've been integrating with. But I think hopefully what we'll see is the two of them together. And I think in some ways it's partly to do with Power BI being marketed as a visual tool. I don't see the strength of Power BI as a visual tool. In fact, there's better visual tools on the market, right? For purely just visualization, Tableau is a better tool. The strength of Power BI is the ability to, model your problem as a business, or understand what's going on. And that works really well with Excel. So yeah, I don't see Excel going away anytime soon. What I'd like to see is better Excel and the right tool being used in the right place. So I've seen people producing, daily sales reports and taking 4 hours a day, just somebody's job every day, come in 4 days to produce a daily sales report. Madness, right? Absolute madness. That should be automated in Power BI and you get a better result. And they were doing 4 hours every day. It wasn't even right? Because of, we go into, we're not going to go into accounting standards things, but this, so there's things, but on the other hand, when they're sat there budgeting, it's, I want to tweak this number, I want to change this number. There are kind of custom visuals in Power BI, which kind of takes you into the realm of not Power BI, because it's TypeScript and CSS and everything else. So I've gone a bit of a tangent there, but my short answer is I don't see the trend completely away from Excel to Power BI. I'd like to see more of that trend, but I'd like to see Excel not as a data source. My data isn't Excel, my data is, and then I can kind of, connect to it through the API, right?
Yeah, one of the things that I think has held Power BI back is Microsoft's marketing of it, for sure. They've obviously made a decision they've got thousands of people probably working on brand positioning and pricing, etc. And they've decided that the visualization aspect is the way that they want to market. When the reality is, it is an analytical engine. It can almost be like the analytical underpinnings of your entire business. And when you build that up, when you build the foundations of that up well, there's so much you can scale out to in multiple different directions using Power BI and the ecosystem around it. But they've decided not to market it that way for a particular reason. I'm not sure. Maybe because they've got competing tools. They were competing with SQL Server. They were competing with Excel. They were competing with, I don't know, vast majority of other things. And I'm sure it gets very political in there. But yeah, that's sort of my take on it, is that they've probably had to hold themselves back in some respects because of the other business challenges or the other business considerations that they've had to make as a wider organization. What do you think about that?
Yes, I'd say the marketing has drastically changed over time. So I think certainly initially it was there as the let's take Tableau out of the market. I mean, nobody will explicitly say this, certainly not from the cat team, but let's take Tableau on and let's take that market share. And the marketing was very much in the beginning, 5 minutes from data to visualization, I think was the strap line, or it's something along those lines. Power BI is now completely miles away from that product. The whole way since Premium came in, and the way that it is now a enterprise reporting tool as much as it is a local reporting tool. So so I'd say the marketing shifted, and I think maybe 2 years ago we'd have been talking about Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI all together, right? It's part of the Power Platform. That vocabulary is kind of less and less now, and they're in different sort of realms. So I think Microsoft marketing around it probably is a difficult thing to understand, but definitely it's been the perception of it in the marketplace is a visualization tool. When the real thing that excites me is nothing to do with visualization. It's under the hood what it can do, right, in the engine they've built, which is fantastic.
I was actually just searching the Power BI website when you were saying that, and you are right. It has, I guess, evolved. It has evolved. Turn your data into immediate impact. Do more with less using an end-to-end BI platform. And then it says, create a data-driven culture with business intelligence for all. Self-service analytics, smart tools for strong results, help protect your analytics data. Yeah, so they have somewhat changed it a little bit, haven't they? But it's interesting when you look at it like that. When you now market it like that, I think it probably maybe even scares a few Excel users away because they think it's more enterprise, don't they? It's tough. It's so tough for them, isn't it? So tough. I mean, I'm not crying for them at night. I mean, they're a multi-trillion-dollar business, but it's and they make a ton of money. So I'm not sad for them. But man, it's tough, isn't it? It's really tough to position it right with all your other products.
Yeah, I'm certainly not a marketing expert, but it's definitely not easy, right? Because it's such a vast product. And even if you look at Power BI Desktop, it's not one thing, right? It's it's the visualization. It's also a database storing all your data because you're loading it into Vertipack, and it's also all the metadata. So it's kind of three things bundled together. But you start off telling someone you are going to scare them off pretty quickly. So it's and I would say that 90% of Power BI users are, it gets installed automatically with Windows now. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to import a flat bit of data. I would expect that 90% of people, in fact, probably, I don't know, a fair percentage of people don't get past the first screen. And then there'd be, after that, it would be, most people would just be one table of data, not even a date table.
Yeah. It's, that's the other sad thing is that those of us who really dived into the product early, we saw Power Query, we saw the power of the model, we saw the power of DAX formulas, and we saw the power of reporting, we saw the power of how the online service can be your distribution mechanism, a really effective aggregation and distribution mechanism for your insights. All of those things combined, I think those who really dig into it can see. But like 80% of that wasn't even part of the marketing for Power BI. And so if you don't know that, if you don't actually spend the time, you don't see it because I'll tell you a funny story. When I first started out with Enterprise DNA, I went into a business and I told them about Power BI. They were already using Tableau and they're like, what's the difference? And I said, have you heard of Power Query? It's absolutely incredible. It's incredible. It can automate all of the tasks that you do, and there's no such thing in Tableau. And they just their eyes just glanced over. That no one cared. Like no one really could understand it, or it just. And I would presume that Microsoft did similar sort of surveying, and they found the same thing, right? It's just not exciting. It doesn't get people excited about using the technology. So that's why they never sold it. I saw that firsthand, even though I appreciated it and I knew how much of a difference it made to anyone who worked with data. The reality is, like, if you don't know, you just didn't care. You didn't really care. You didn't see the value.
Yeah, and there is a danger, particularly in this industry, that technology for technology's sake, and we all like the latest geeky kind of monthly release and all this is new. But I think what users are interested in is value. So I think if you can find find pain points. So I presume in your example, you were speaking to IT, right? Because it's tabular. You're probably speaking to an enterprise IT team, right? But if you're speaking to somebody in the marketing team or somebody in the HR team or the finance team, and they had a pain point they were doing each month with their sort of particular reports that they were having to produce, that's when you can go, well, you're spending X amount of hours doing this, or you're doing this repeat task. That's when your Power Query they might get more excited, not because of Power Query, but because of, hey, I can save X amount of hours per day doing the mundane stuff that I really don't like doing.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I had two interactions that are worth mentioning here. I think in that particular instance, I was talking to a manager who just had no appreciation. They had no appreciation for, they just wanted to see shiny charts and visualizations. They didn't have any appreciation for what went into it. And so that's why their eyes sort of glazed over and they were like, I don't even know what this is. Why would anyone care? Even though it's such a huge part of any analysis. The other interaction I had was also with another one. This is another example, was with an IT professional who was very IT savvy. And they knew what ETL was, and I was telling them, that Power Query can do the vast majority of what ETL can do, and then they threw their hands up and they're like, oh, no way, it can't do that, it can't do this, can't do that. They were like, Alteryx does all this so much better. And I was like, well, honestly, for the vast majority of data analysts, like this tool can do it, and they just didn't want to know. They didn't want to. They didn't want to see what changes were actually happening. So I actually saw both sides of it. It was very, very, very fascinating to sort of see that firsthand. And really, what it came down to was I realized why Microsoft were marketing Power BI the way they were. That's what it came down to for me. Was you had. It just wasn't the sexy part of analytics. It wasn't the part that everyone was like, wow, this is going to really, really blow my mind. This is going to really make a huge difference out there, even though we know it does, who really dive into this sort of stuff. But I don't know, maybe I don't know what the answer is. It's kind of like if you're selling a house, right? No one really cares about how the internal wiring has been done, do they? It's the same sort of thing. It's not like you're going to market a property because of the way the internal wiring's been done amazingly well. It's sort of that, isn't it? It's kind of, you've got to showcase the shiny bits to get the buy-in.
Yeah, and I think candidly, I think there are features that Microsoft have in the product which are there as sales rather than stuff that will work in practice necessarily, right? They look great in a demo and they're nice and shiny, but in practice, the nuts and bolts is what makes the product work. So there is an element of that, right? And I'm not a salesperson or a marketing expert, but there's definitely stuff in there that I would say is more kind of there to kind of get the wow factor, right?
As an MVP, are you happy to mention any of those features?
Well,
I'm happy to. I know that you've got various other considerations.
Yeah, I feel like some of the stuff around sort of AI, machine learning, as it's worded, I think that's there because AI machine learning is just a buzzword that people click on when they see AI machine learning. So if you kind of factor that into any kind of visual or anything, I think it kind of people go, wow, right? Now that stuff can be great, but you need an exceptionally good model behind it. You need all of your synonyms in there and all that kind of stuff, right? Which very few people are gonna go to. So yeah, I would say those kind of things are the kind of things that I'm kind of like, I'm always a bit wait, how's this work in practice?
Yeah. I think like if I was being truly honest, a couple of things. I think custom visualizations for a long time was just pretty useless. But they did improve it. It did get better. So I will give them credit. But to begin with, I always questioned what is the point in this? Like that you're having to pay for extra visuals when you can just get basically the same insight with an out of the box. I mean, I always really question that. But I would say that it's evolved now to where there is some value there. I really, really dislike deployment pipelines. I feel like that is just such a poor implementation of that particular feature. Good idea, terrible implementation is just there to sort of say, I think to your point is just to say they've got it. quick measures I always thought was a really poor implementation. I think that there's some improvements in the online service as well that it's sort of like creating a data dictionary, an easier way to sift through measures and data and columns, etc., within the online service to almost create like a dictionary. I think that could be really enhanced and improved. Yeah, so I think we're sort of on the same page there. I'm a bit more vocal, I guess, understandably so.
No, I think you'll find that, as a community, probably MVPs are probably some of those critical people of the product as a whole. Yeah. I'm probably just more of a reserved individual. I would say deployment pipelines, yes, because they only have 3 stages, right? So that's the big limitation. Whereas you can deploy through DevOps, which is a far more powerful way of doing things, right? Because you don't just tend to have the 3 environments, right? So there's definitely limitations in there. Custom visuals is an interesting one. Custom visuals, it's like you're writing an entirely different product within the product itself. So I think the danger with custom visuals is it's no longer really Power BI. If you've ever tried to write a custom visual or ever done a custom visual and you've got into the CSS and the TypeScript, it's entirely different product. You've just got free reign to do anything that you want to do. So I can take data out, I can write it to another database, which is why they can use write back in certain custom visuals, right? So it's custom visuals is just purely down to the quality of the individual creating the code. I work with James Dales, who's got Icon Map, which is probably one of the most popular custom visuals out there. I don't know the stats on who's downloaded what, but I'd say Icon Map is. He's
done a really great presentation at one of our events. I actually have bookmarked his presentation in our learning platform because the Icon Map has some great features that just aren't available out of the box with Power BI.
Yeah, and we've had client-specific stuff where we have to go in and write a custom visual because they wanted to do something very specific, right? So we've written a custom visual just for that client, and it's their IP, right? So probably it comes down to the quality of the person writing the code, and you can write absolute junk, like I probably did first time I had to go at it, or you can write some stuff which is really, really powerful. So I think it's a nice feature to have there. It's like an open, but it probably, like you said, it's difficult. It's difficult because the quality is hard to see at times. Some of them might break on you, and that's really difficult.
Yeah, but if you really think back to the beginnings of it, they created the custom visual to directly compete with Tableau, because I think Tableau were even marketing at the time, we've got so many other visuals, right? And so they created it, and I think they did that quickly, and it was just Mickey Mouse for a long time. I think though that the ecosystem of suppliers to it has really, really improved. Zebra BI's, InfoRiver, Icon Map. There's some really good providers there now. So I think it just made sense in the long term. But initially, it was a bit weird. I thought a bit sort of marketing focused. But in any case, things have worked out. So they're pretty sharp. They know what they're doing.
I've got more of an issue with like the Python visuals and the R visuals, right? At least the custom visuals are programmed the same way Microsoft do them. But I do get your point to the earlier implementation.
Of course, unfortunately, we do have to round up. I'm shortly. I've got to move on to another call. But really enjoyed our conversation. Is there any final thoughts? And also, where can users find more information about about your insights, websites, other methods of distributing your content? Where's the best place?
Thanks. So thank you very much for having me. So my main point of contact is on starschema.co.uk. I'm active on LinkedIn, Christopher Michael Barber is my full name. But starschema.co.uk is my main port of reference. I think final thoughts is, don't beat yourself up if you don't know everything. I don't think, everybody does across the thing. I think you get a broad understanding and then decide where you want to be excellent, because, it's very difficult to be great everywhere. And certainly I work with people who know far more about certain areas of Power Automate, Power Apps, even, loads of elements of Power BI that I've no idea about. So I would say just get yourself a base understanding and go from there. I know it can be really daunting to begin with. And that's everything from me. And obviously, thank you so much for having me. And obviously, I've been admirer of enterprise DNA and all the work you've been doing for quite some time. So yeah, it's really good to have this catch up.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it as well. Appreciate the insights that you've brought. And yeah, no doubt that everyone tuning in has really enjoyed this discussion. So let's round things off. Cheers, Chris, and thanks everyone for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to your favorite listening channel, and look forward to getting some more content out to you this year about all the great things happening in this space. Thanks, Chris, once again. Take care, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. It's great to be connected, and I hope you are enjoying the content we're creating through the Analytic Mind podcast. If you enjoyed this session, make sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified for each episode as we release them. If you want to learn more about Enterprise DNA and the many initiatives we're working on, check out www.enterprisedna.co. There we have a range of resources to download, events to attend, and information to explore. We're leading the charge around this new paradigm we're living in, where tools like Power BI can literally change how an organization manages, analyzes, and distributes insights that can make an impact. It's an exciting moment in the analytics space. So glad that you're on this journey with us. Take care.